Hello and welcome to I Want to Grow, and I Want to Grow is all about that, right? It's all about our growth. But with our guests, you hear me say this every single week. With our guests, it's a little different. It's on how they're helping others grow more than themselves. And today we have the amazing Jeff. Jeff, I'm not going to introduce you because I wouldn't do you the best of introductions, right? But come on, introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Well, I would say I was from Texas. I'm over here in Qatar for a while just to enjoy the view. But if I were to talk like I do back home, maybe the AI wouldn't be able to handle the sort of transcription. So yeah, I'm a seventh generation Texan, PhD in environmental science, former professor, went through Y Combinator and raised the only uncapped round in our batch. Had a couple of startups. And that's where kind of the normal stuff stops.
It's definitely that you're not the normal person, right? You're just not.
I mean, just having one look at me, I'd say I look pretty normal, yeah.
Yeah. But just going through, just before the podcast, I'm just absolutely fascinated. I could sit here all day listening to your stories. But you've done some incredible things, right? It's kind of, we're joking here and we're laughing, but you're a serious player.
I don't know that I'm serious or much of a player. I'm definitely not serious and most definitely not a player, but yeah, I guess there's just kind of a couple of tenets of things that I learned pretty early and decided to do that sort of got me here. I look around, I'm like, where am I?
Yeah.
I landed here last night, and I saw two of the most beautiful museums I've ever seen in the world. I've traveled to 90 plus countries. And just the sort of level of sophistication and advanced technology here, you feel the future.
But you're pretty much into that technology field. You're doing some incredible things. That's a statement in itself, what you've just said about Qatar there, because you've come to this place and it takes you back a little, because I don't know what your expectations were before you came here. What were they?
Well, I tried to enter without a lot of expectations. You know what you know, that this is a culture with a long, deep history, that it's one of the wealthiest countries, if not the wealthiest per capita in the world. But often, I don't know how to say this, often sort of wealth does not equal taste. And I think what I was most shocked by was, when I walked into these museums, they were of the highest taste and caliber in the world. And it is very rare to walk into a space or to see something that is man-made that evokes a state of awe. The Eiffel Tower didn't really do it for me too much. A lot of these things, the Vatican that you hear about, the only two times I've experienced a state of awe as of something that wasn't natural was the Hoover Dam outside of, but I was a very young boy when I first saw that outside of Las Vegas.
A huge
just piece of cement. It's impossible to deny its awe-inspiring. The second was last year, the first Starship in Texas, Elon's first Starship to go up. Just looking at that thing, and actually I'm close to a lot of folks there. One of his main engineers worked for me for a while, the main structures engineer that built the Starship prototype. the factory of building starships. And you look up at that thing and you're like, how is this real? And I experienced that feeling for the third time walking into I.M. Pei's building, the Museum of Islamic Art here. I felt like I was in the simulation. I might have been.
I'm so excited. I wish I could interview this afternoon when we finish our tour of ITCON, Simulation and Innovation Center, which
I can't wait to see.
I can't wait to take you there.
I can't wait to see that. Wow.
This is going to be something really, really special for you.
It's almost as if Qatar was prepping for what was coming with AI. I got on, I'll give you a clip of this. I got on, I was like, man, my internet's moving really fast, right when I arrived at the airport. And I had these glasses on. I'm in this like super futuristic train, right? The metro here, headed towards the souk. And so I pulled up both of my phones and did a speed test. And it was doing like 700 down, right? And like the infrastructure that's been built here, and I don't know, just something about the general vibe. It was almost like, rather than how we're prepping back in Texas with our guns and, cans of beans, it was like a prepping for AI. That's the vibe I got here.
I love the place. I've been here 16 years now.
Yeah.
I've seen people say to me constantly, you must have seen so many changes. And yes, there's been more buildings. Yes, there are quite a few things, the stadiums, the health centers, the health facilities, the infrastructure, the schools, you name it. You've seen some impressive stuff that's going on. But I don't think the people have changed one bit. I think they've got that big ambition. I think they're like young kids where they have no fear.
Yeah. Yeah. In the States, you don't learn about the intricacies of culture, right? If someone was to mistake someone from Texas for someone from Oklahoma, there's fixing to be a fight, right? You don't learn this about the world until you go and experience it. And I've been to the, Emirates. I've been to Bahrain. I've been to many Gulf states. And there seems to be more of an entrepreneurial curiosity here that is necessary than I've seen, that you would have never known had you not shown up. And I just showed up. I don't really have anything to do here yet. I was just like, inshallah, something's going to happen.
And without a shadow of a doubt with you, there is something definitely going to happen. And it's a real privilege for me to have you on the podcast today. In saying that, let's take you back in time a little bit. Let's take you back, before we start, with Elon Musk. I'm sure he's a time traveler. Because those rockets that come back down and go into the place, it's just amazing.
It's quite remarkable, right? Set aside, I think you have to parse folks, different parts of their personality. There are things that we don't love about everyone, including Elon. But having run a couple of venture-backed hard tech startups, he's from the future or from another planet or both. Yeah, it's pretty just, it is. And, I work with a lot of folks that are have worked with him very closely. And it is remarkable, the stories they tell.
Remarkable. And just seeing the stuff that they're doing is remarkable. But we're going back into your story now. I'm sorry, I jumped a lot there. But going into your story, what was your story? Even when you were a young man, how have you become the person you are today?
I don't know. I grew up in a village on a ranch outside of Austin in central South Texas, town of about 1,500 people. Like, there wasn't even a Walmart then. There wasn't even a grocery store. We had one stoplight. And I had always just been, I guess, curious about the world. Always felt a little different and out of place and frankly awkward. And I just sort of stepped through life, as you do, one step into the sand after another. I think at one point in life, I just decided to stop giving a crap about what other folks thought, sort of did what I wanted, and did a few things that did not have a why. And I think these are the most interesting things in life. It's almost as if some gravitational mass is pulling you towards it, and there is no real explanation of what that force is, but you kind of have to do it. And sometimes these are crazy things, right? Like one of them we'll talk about is living in a trash can for a year.
And we are going to talk about this.
And actually sitting here today with you, like I said, I don't have any real reason or a bunch of appointments. And one of the guys that I was actually coming to see may not even be here. But it was a sort of inshallah kind of thing that without a lot of religion wrapped around it, I don't know what it is, but sometimes you're just called to go do things that are not highly logical.
I think we all get those moments, right? Now, with saying that you just didn't know your pathway in the sand. Yeah. How did your parents react to that? How did they embrace that, and did they support you in that area and gave you all the, or were they thinking, where is this going? What can we do?
Yeah, I was hoping they were going to come around to that, but I could say they came around to it 20 years ago, 10 years ago, but as of exchanging a few texts with my father earlier today asking where I was, I don't think they're quite there, because it's just like I've got to a point of like, it's better just to turn off location tracking and tell dad and mom you'll be back, rather than you're going to some country in the Middle East that they may have not heard of, but they definitely can't pronounce.
Yeah.
And generally what I do is just, it's very much a ask for forgiveness, not permission thing. They're going to love the photos when I get back.
Oh, that's a
and
great
the
story.
stories.
Yeah, great story.
And this podcast, probably.
Yeah, and I can't wait for them to listen to it. So when did you start realizing what your true destiny, and I don't think you know your true destiny yet, because it keeps on pulling you into different directions. Yeah. But when did you know your true destiny? What that you said, right?
I don't think you can know, right? These are moments in time, or sustained moments, right? Like gravitational masses move. Nothing in the universe is fixed, right? It's constantly as we know, expanding. And that expansion, I think, is something that's very interesting, because often as we move through life, we begin to cut off the possibilities, right, and develop much more of a tunnel type lens of where we're going. And, the universe is expansive, and it's accelerating, it's quickening, right? So I try to keep my sort of lens wide, or just throw the lens away.
You're a professor.
I'm a professor.
You've taught students.
I've taught students.
Those
At
students,
times. They've taught me.
I'm so glad you said that, but it's like, but they must think that you're incredible. The type of person that you are, the way that you must teach.
I will say, I was also a dean, an academic administrator, and I do not miss being an administrator. Generally, as a dean, I don't know what the position would be in sort of the British.
Principal would
headmaster. A headmaster, but at the university level.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
You generally spend your time arguing with other professors about two very important subjects in academia. Number one is where their office is or will be. And number two, what parking spot they should get. And by the way, you can't fire these people, right? They have tenure for life.
I'm sure they're going to love you saying all of this.
I don't miss that part. Oh, any dean or administrator out there will laugh because this is exactly what you do. But the professor side of it, man, I was just writing the president of this university where I did this social experiment we'll talk about this morning, actually right on my way over here, and saying how excited I was. She's just announced an initiative to be the first Black AI university. So in the United States, there are these colleges called historically Black colleges. They were basically, most of them were founded around the time when slaves were freed, right? Because there was no educational system, and they still exist today. And, you know, the experiment was weird, but it was weirder because I was teaching at an all-Black college, all African-American college while doing this. So, you know, the opportunity to work with those students, many of them had come, you know, literally from the hood, you know, from the places you see the movies like Compton and South Central Los Angeles. We had a pretty big group of students from there. And to see what those kids have gone out and done, I miss that probably more than any job that I can look back on and actually say I miss.
Incredibly rewarding.
It was just insane to watch, right? To even just be there, you know, as a bystander, just insane to watch the transformation. I mean, my students started a group while I was there called Green is the New Black, right? A sort of a play on Orange is the New Black, but black being more of a racial thing here and green being sustainability. Their first semester of starting this group, they essentially beat out the Ivy League of historically Black colleges, the sort of Harvards and Stanfords and Princetons of these historically Black colleges with this group. It was insane to watch. Yeah.
What? And I'm fascinated, and these are the questions that I want to ask: is what was your superpower then? Because you must have had several to be able to connect with those kids.
So I had, there's a lot of subjects in, just generally in the world that appear to be quite boring and mundane. And I think what I always tried to do was to teach what would be considered the most boring subject, like statistics, right? That some people might consider really boring, and just make it really relevant and interesting to the students in the class. I think some of the other things that, you know, I was an early adopter of allowing cell phones. So I would tell students, first day, all right, everybody, there is never going to be another time in your life outside of a podcast interview, right, where you're not going to be connected. You're going to be on your phones. So if you can pass the class and be on your phones, stay on them the entire time. You will need to move to the back of the class so you're not distracting anyone else. Everybody stand up. If you want to use your phone, go to the back. So things like that I actually got called into the provost office for doing, right? Wow. It wasn't illegal, but the students started telling the other professors this. And now, like you think about in this age of AI, it's not going to be long before we all have one of those. You know, it's not going to be too long before many of us will have a chip in our head. We're going to be almost always on and always connected. I think the other thing that I did that students liked is I didn't ever bullshit. If I couldn't answer a question, I would just say, look, I have no clue. but next class, I'll come back and tell you. And I can still remember the last one of those times where I was sort of embarrassed. I was teaching a cosmology course, and I taught a bunch of different things. And a student asked me why Mars did not have an atmosphere. And I was like, I have no clue. And briefly, as I recall, I went and looked it up, and Mars has a solid core where the Earth has a molten core, and this sort of gyroscopy rotation, I'm not a physicist, this is going to sound very basic, creates a sort of ability, a magnetic field, right, that then is able to shield stuff from the sun so that you can have an atmosphere. That was part of it, at least. That could be completely wrong, but that was 12 years ago. Yeah, I don't remember much from 12 years ago.
But you seem to be doing, you don't always do things that most people would expect from you. It seems that you'll do the things that you feel that's right, and that's brought you rewards.
Yeah, I mean, if rewards are sleeping well at night, I guess this Brian Johnson don't die guy would say that's pretty key. And apparently I saw a podcast interview with one of your colleagues, Lex Friedman, where he interviewed a CIA officer, and they said they teach you two things in the CIA, right, that are very, very important. One is like how to boil an egg, right, anywhere in the world so that you can eat. And the most important thing is how to get a good night of sleep, right? And so, yeah, those two things, I can boil a damn good egg, and I sleep very well anywhere.
Sleep deprivation is one of the hardest things to deal with. But where I was going with that is, let's call you the Professor Dumpster.
Yeah.
Why do people call you that?
Yeah, so that was one of those gravitational masses that just didn't make a whole lot of sense that I was being pulled towards, for sure. And something that my mother and father definitely found out about after the fact, after the thing was going. So I was sitting at a Starbucks during the Christmas holiday, kind of editing a paper. Right. And I can tell you the name of this is what academics do, right? The currency outside of currency in academia is peer-reviewed publications, right? So this was being submitted to, I think, a place called Health in Place was a journal, I think. And the article was Intra-Urban Concentrations of Particulate Matter Less than 10 microns in diameter and the Adverse Effects on Cohort Epidemiological Studies. That was not the abstract. That was the title. And I was just kind of looked down. I was like, bro, like, what am I doing with my life? I can't even get my students to read this. And I looked up, and a dump truck pulls in. Guy hops out, says Jeff on his name tag, opens the little gates, dumps this trash can, and then he drives off. And I had an epiphany. And I called my best friend, Yvette, very skeptical, down on the border. I was like, Yvette, I want to sell everything I own for $1, and I want to move into a dumpster for a year. What do you think? Like, long pause. JF, I don't know why the hell I'm about to say this. I can't even believe I'm going to say it, but it sounds like a good idea. And so I did it. The next week, I went and started telling everyone I was moving into a dumpster. And probably a year later, I did sell everything to my students. It took about 45 minutes for $1 per item out of a massive house, a 4-bedroom house. And sold the house, not for $1. And I moved into a 4 square meter trash can of where I stayed for a year.
I'm going to say this to you, and I love you already, but I'm going to say, because it's going to be, was it a stunt that you were doing? Or what was the purpose? No,
and this is what people don't, these gravitational masses we talked about that pull at you. that you have to do. A lot of times they make no sense, but just something tells you, I've got to do, you've got to do this. And you know what I found with several of these? Even if they're absolutely outlandish, there's an event in your life, a friend that knows you really well, that may even be very skeptical, that just says, you know what, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it actually kind of sounds like a good idea for you. And so that it was not a stunt. In fact, I never told anyone about it. I just moved into the dumpster. I get a call from someone, I don't remember, at Wired or one of these places, like, I heard you were living in a dumpster on campus. I'm like, yeah. Well, I'm going to write a piece on it. I want to write a piece on it. Can I interview? And I said, no, we don't really want any attention. We're just doing the experiment. And, you know, old reporter trick I know now, right, is, well, I'm going to write it anyways, right? You better talk to me, right? And so I did, and then, yeah, it people became interested.
Jeff, what was it like? And I try and put myself in your position. Can you remember that first night when you closed your eyes and you realized what you'd done? You were in that dumpster and you closed your eyes. I was in one of
those reality distortion fields, right, to where it just didn't seem that weird. I kind of realized conceptually, right, that this was a very strange thing to do, but I mean, I slept well. A few nights later, when my good friend Anthony got a BB gun, a pellet gun, and started pinging my metal dumpster at about 3:30 in the a.m., I did not sleep well. It was very cold that first night. When this sort of got to the local news, we were watching a clip earlier. You know, everybody loves a liberal professor suffering in a trash can, right? Especially in a conservative state like Texas. So the news, anytime there was an extreme heat or cold event, it got down to about -5 in there Celsius, and it got up to about 45. In the summer, the news crews would show up, Professor Dumpster, how's the weather in the dumpster? And I would be like, it's about like the weather where you are actually standing right outside of the dumpster, except probably a little hotter or colder, depending on, whether it's hot outside or cold.
Looking back on that time, what have you learned most? Has it really had a big influence on your life? Did you learn a lot?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you really... I really don't recommend it to anyone else, first off. I'm not like trying to go out and proselytize the, life of dumpster living. I learned what is a, cliche phrase, right? That like you really don't need a lot of stuff to be really happy. I was really happy. And in fact, to a certain extent, there is a inverse relationship in some ways between the amount of stuff you have and sometimes the amount of space and sort of how content you feel. And I took that to obviously an extreme. There is a point of diminishing returns. You've probably seen these things at a certain level of income, right? People just tend to be less happy, whatever this is, $120,000 or depending on where you are. So it's certainly not for everyone. And frankly, I wouldn't suggest anyone do it, but those were the things I learned. I literally wept when I had to move out of that dumpster at the end. I mean, look, my commute instantly went from a 30-second walk, because I lived on campus, to a 35-minute drive. My rent went from zero.
I was going to say your rent charges went through the roof.
So the president of the university, I asked to renew my lease. They were like, no, it's time for you to go. My rent went from zero to $2,300 US a month. I never had to clean my bathroom because it was in the gym, or my kitchen that was in the dorm. And now I have to clean my bathroom in my kitchen. There were, I began to, I had to have more stuff, right? I needed to at least have a couple of forks and, a couple of plates. But what's persisted is really like I've been, is continuing to live a little bit more of that minimal, like, lifestyle. The little backpack that I have over there is, I've been to Egypt. I've been way out into Western Egypt by Libya for about 2.5 weeks, and that's all I have with me. I've worn these same pants every day, so I did shower and wash them recently.
We're going over all these things. It must have been, what was it like for the students watching their professor living in one of these dumpsters?
I mean, they loved it, right? And I can't say that I did stay in the dumpster every night. When we did, students would stay in there and I would go stay at my girlfriend's. And then they would film themselves and talk about sustainability or living on less or what they, brought into the dumpster and what they learned when they left. We would have headmasters from schools because I'd go around and Professor Dumpster would talk to kids about sustainability. They loved it. And then with my girlfriend, whenever it was like my place or yours, it was most definitely hers. I think she only spent like 2 nights in the dumpster the entire year. And the second one was a hard sell.
Lightweight.
Yeah.
Now, in saying all, we're kind of talking about stuff that you've done and the things that you've achieved. Let's talk about some of your successes now, and let's be honest. You've got quite a lot. With the way that you've taken your being a professor and all those types of experiences that you've gone through, there's a serious side to this in the way that you're helping. You say Y Combinate,
Y Combinator, yeah.
Yeah, you've been part of. You help people with their pitches. You're nonstop.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about this right now.
Yeah, so the serious stuff that I'm doing right now, if you want to call it that, my current sort of hustle, side gig, full-time, that's become sort of full-time, is I help founders tell their story in a creative way, and then everything else around the actual pitch process to raise money from specifically Silicon Valley VCs, which are very strange animals, right? That are, you kind of have to live amongst them in the zoo for a while to really understand their psychology. So I've worked with dozens of founders, many of them former Y Combinator CEOs that still need help, right? Like telling their new stories and helping them to tell that story to raise the money. And then all the tools and everything around that. It's more really an art. There's some scientific sort of buttresses to it, but it's not the things that you read off of YouTube and watch off of YouTube that I'm teaching. And it's generally one-on-one, right? Because I really like to get into the founder story. And every founder, right? You've got to be a little crazy to be a founder, right? Yeah. You're leaving what was probably a good job or a good potential job if you're getting out of college. You're doing something where 99% of the people fail. It takes an incredible amount of technical skill and bravery to do this. And a lot of folks this isn't a natural thing, this sort of art of pitching. And so, I'll sit down with founders. One of them was a YC founder that had been trying to raise for 4 months, had got no checks. Within about 45 days of me working with him, he had a term sheet for his entire round, right? And this was a plugged-in founder. He just wasn't telling his story in a compelling way.
I tried in the early days when websites were coming out, I said that there was 5 fundamentals that you had to have. You had to have search engine optimization. If nobody finds you, you've got to have content. Content is king. Image and perception, design is everything. Yeah. The right development side of things, and a content management system that you could update on a regular basis.
Right.
And then I used to ask different people which one was the most important one.
Right.
And the designers would say image and perception is everything. Right. And then the content writer, as we said, content is king. That's the big big one. But in all of this, I see that, and I used to say they're all important as one another.
All right.
Right? Because without one of them, everything seems to break
and
down.
what's most important is story. As humans, right, think about where we are here in Qatar. The oral traditions that go back millennia here and the way that history is kept, I would guess, is through story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And it's, I've heard people say that that's the one thing we can say for sure that humans do that no one else does. And I would also conject that AI, in terms of one of the last things that it will be able to do, is tell a really compelling, like heartfelt story. And so that's what I'm really doing, right, is taking the sort of left brain side of this, the storytelling, having the knowledge of raising the only uncapped round in my Y Combinator class, right, out of 400, of pitching 400 or 500 different VCs, of, being a scientist and publishing dozens of peer-reviewed publications, taking kind of all of that, but then saying, let's embrace the dumpster side and the creative side. And how can we tell this story such that that founder that's there grinding and that's like as courageous as a gladiator, right, out there in the actual arena, stop mixing metaphors here, help them to get the capital that they need to execute on their vision, and then tell that story to employees, to their customers, right? Sometimes those stories are slightly, you tell a different part of the story, but it's all about storytelling.
But your energy, if you've got one of those stories, the energy for the founder must be don't worry about what it's going to raise you or potential stories
Right.
that you can give to other people. But once you've got that story right, once you've got that pitch right, what it does for you and your mental side of things
I never
is
thought about that.
immeasurable.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you see the transformation of like, we're building a SaaS platform that optimizes financial service associates that to like, oh my God, 100 million families in the U.S. are now going to have a financial advisor and have real like wealth development, right? 100 million, families, right? To like watch that trend. And the story was always there, right? The pearl was always in there, if you will, right? You just had to sort of have the tool to crack it open and see it and then to share it, right?
With me, I kind of one of the things with these is market research. You've got to be doing market research without a shadow of a doubt. If you're not making sure that what you're doing is something right or solving the problem, then it's going to be a real issue. And and I'm not going to go into detail, but you've got all the other things that you need to consider. But I think if you don't sell it right, and you said it, if you don't sell it to the potential investors, to
Right.
yourself and to your employees, I think you're doing,
And to the world.
and to the world.
Yeah.
Because you're going to do yourself injustice.
Right. Yeah.
You're
right.
You're always
and
going
I
to
mean, like, did you see that show, Silicon Valley on HBO?
No, I didn't.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's great. So some of your viewers may have seen this, but like one of the it's sort of a snarky take on Silicon Valley culture about 10 years ago. And one of the sort of core snarky things that they do throughout it is like talking about how you're, changing the world with your SaaS platform, right? For, optimizing cement manufacturing or something, right?
Yeah.
But, in some way, right, this is how founders have to feel about what they're doing, is that they're really changing at least some part of the world. And what we talked about earlier is expansion, right? Is not, generally there's a much bigger vision to be uncovered, right, under whatever the business is. And I think that's probably, if anything that I do, is helping folks to expand and tell that story, right? Because there's always more out there, right? And there's always a bigger vision to be sort of unveiled within the vision that you currently are talking about.
It's finding that magic though, and that's where you've got to push those boundaries in all of us, right? Because we are in that area that we the comfort zone. You try to stay in or not always try and stay in it, but the pain, beyond that point is a great deal. And it's like, you've just got to find, like you said about the gladiator, you've got to find your shield. You've got to find your sword. You've got to go out and fight daily. And you've got to know where to strike. You've got to.
And you've got to know when to sort of buckle down, right?
Listen to what people are telling you.
Yeah, that's a really good way to think about it. Yeah.
It's just that you've got so many experts, and with the startup ecosystem, the results of successes are not that great, right?
It's 90, depending on what you're looking at, early stage startups, 95 to 99% of them fail. And, a lot of just even getting it going, right? You generally going to need some capital. Definition of a startup is that you just grow really, really fast relative to other businesses where growth isn't as important. You need that jet fuel to get going, right? And so, most folks think about, I got to tell my story, and that's kind of the end of it. Well, actually, to sustain your ability to stay in the ring and stay in the game, you've got to understand that story, because it's a story you tell to yourself as well. Being a founder, is one of the worst, most idiotic jobs you would ever choose. You have to be crazy in a bit of a masochist, right? Or sadist to actually even do it, right? Yeah. It's painful.
Yeah, painful.
And if you don't have that story that you're telling yourself when you go to bed at night and wake up in the morning and dream about in between, you will not make it. You can't make it just focused on making the money, right? That's a big part of it, but the story is the most important part.
What excites you now? Because it sounds that you come over as quite laid back. Yeah. I know you're passionate. You got a smile on your face. Yeah. But you're one serious dude when it comes to going forward and pushing forward in the right areas. Look at the time we're in, this timeline. Regardless of what you think about simulation, base reality, timelines, all of this, how freaking lucky are we? Right? How freaking lucky am I right now? I'm in what might be the highest tech country in the world, right? During a time where super exponential growth, right, is occurring in the most important technology since fire, at least. Having just looked back on seeing a Mosaic browser for the first time, or hearing a dial-up connection for the first time. Oh my word. From then to now, this morning on the way over here, talking to something the world didn't know about a week ago, this DeepSeek model, which has changed everything we even believed about AI. Yeah. What the hell, man? This is the most incredible. Going to Mars, and then challenges, climate change, war, it's just an incredible time to be alive. So I really do wish there were a million versions of me that could go explore all of these possibilities. And that's actually the next thing that I want to work on. Right. It's funny you should say that, because I had the urge of, and remember the magnetic pools, or where you're going to, before you even said it, I'm looking up and saying, but I'm quite confident the world's got people like you in it, because they're going out there and making a difference. Because sometimes that's all it takes sometimes, right? Is to look up and say, I can make a difference. And it's okay and I want people to get over that they can make a difference. No matter how small, no matter what they believe they can give, just give it freely. Give it.
And I don't think you need to know what that difference will be initially, right? The pull towards calling the pull, whatever it was, towards the dumpster. I was going to be an academic the rest of my life. I was going to be writing those papers and teaching students. That was, I mean, maybe I would move up through the administration at some point, but I wanted to be a professor till I died, right? Had I not done that, you know, we most definitely wouldn't be sitting here. And if there are multiple sort of timelines, there's probably very few where we're actually sitting here, right? And all of the things that happened in between around affordable housing and, you know, Silicon Valley, and, you know, there were other sort of experiments that ended up sort of being things along the way. I don't think you always need to know what the difference is that you will make, but there will be a difference.
There will be.
You will know as you're going through it and retrospectively.
That's what I was going to say to you next. My follow-up was to look up and say, with all these things that's in your life right now, it's pretty exciting. I don't know how you keep on saying that I can sleep at night. Yes, you can, but you've got so many different things. What can you share with us? I know that you're sustainable housing. That's going to be one of your biggest projects.
So, you know, I would like to continue to volunteer with the affordable housing. I've had 2 startups that, you know, did affordable housing technology. I'm really interested in the situation over in Gaza, particularly. Those folks need a lot of housing. And I think there are probably some ways to go about that. I know most of the like CEOs in the US, a lot of them in the world, that are working on sustainable housing techniques. And so I'd like to apply some of that knowledge and network to that problem, that challenge, as well as just all of the folks suffering. There are billions, some say up to 3 billion humans that don't have adequate shelter. You know, it like what?
Yeah.
And here, right? Here as well. You know, so I'm interested in that. And then I'm beginning to put together my next sort of gravitational mass that I just cannot avoid doing, that I have to do, right? Which is going to be an AI project that's going to like make the dumpster not even seem like 4 square meters. Wow. It's going to be a crazy AI experiment / you know, potentially company. So I'm not ready to talk about it quite yet.
Are we going to see you in the Middle East?
I hope so. Like, look, you know, one of the other things that I'd really like to explore with people, if they want to reach out, is how to link this country of Qatar living in the future with the place that a lot of the future is being built. So I live, you know, part-time in Silicon Valley and then sort of bounce around between that. And I think there is an opportunity, at least for me, to contribute and help out with that direct sort of portal or bridge, if you will, from Qatar and that little peninsula where most of the innovation in the world has come from, and most of the innovation in the AI space will come from in the future. Although China's just thrown a real curveball.
I think it's just the will. I think it's you know, we talk about consistency, we talk about work ethic, we talk about desire, we talk about all those things. One thing I'd say with Qatar especially, the quality of life is just unbelievable.
It's unbelievable, yeah. And you know, I was writing, and I keep these little notebooks. I've got about 300 of them.
Oh, wow.
That, you know, I've got everything from Western Sahara dust in this one to drawings of caves to to-do lists to I was actually writing about what Qatar had to offer beyond money, right? Like folks just generally, you know, thinking about from a Silicon Valley perspective, of course the capital is great, but there's a lot of capital and it's, you know, mostly a commodity. But I think the way this country is embracing the future, the ecosystem they've built, the quality of life. But also, I think there's some deep and rich historical things here that would be very useful to folks like in the Valley to come and experience. So yeah, I'm really excited about making this trip back. Maybe with an actual meeting here next time.
Don't worry about the meetings will be fully booked for you the next time. But there's a couple of questions that I do want to ask. Who's been your inspirations over the years?
You know, my dad a lot. Yeah, he had a really hard life. And he, had to leave home early because he had an extremely abusive father, like guns and stuff. And he barely graduated from UT. He had to run away, actually, before he left home. And he became... they didn't want to give him a job. He tried to get a job at IBM, a computer company that my daughter has not even heard of. Can you, like, a Gen Z, like, she literally did not know what IBM was. That's where we've gone. And he said, well, give me the IQ test. He scored perfect. They thought he cheated. Gave it to him again. He scored perfect. So they gave him the job. Probably the lowest grades of anybody that he barely graduated. And then he very quickly became the top salesperson in the world at IBM for several years. When IBM was McKinsey, right? This was back in the late 70s. And then, I respect him a lot for that. But then also he's just been a fantastic dad. Often, my dad's stepfather's father was a aggressive and violent man. My dad's stepfather was an aggressive and violent man, and my dad just ended up being an amazing father. He coached all my, soccer, football, and basketball teams. He never missed my birthday. It's just like,
oh wow,
it's really, yeah. Sorry.
No, it's kind of I got to be honest. You had me when you said it at the beginning. You looked up and you said, they're worried about, I've got to turn off my locator because they're probably going to worry.
Yeah, and he
where
still
you
cares.
Are.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I had to I have to not share my location at times for long periods of time with them because it is one of those things that, they worry a lot about me.
I could literally, I never met your father, but I could literally, and your mum, but I can look at it and think to myself now, they've got a great son, by the way, 100%.
Oh, would you have like my poor mother, right? Like, yeah. My poor mother.
If you had your time, if you could give a message to your 15-year-old self, what would it be?
My 15?
If you were 15 now, if you were 15 again, what message would you give?
This is a great question. Why did you choose 15?
Because I ask everybody.
Let me see what I was doing in 15. Yeah, I was hacking baseball card packs to get, I think, the David Robinson, who was a basketball player, rookie, which there was only one card in each box. And this card was worth more than the entire box. So that's what I was hustling right at the time. But I one thing I would tell myself is to go do more, go get every box in the entire metro area of Austin, San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas. But I think I would also just say, stop caring what people think earlier than you did, right? I mean, I never cared that much, but I really stopped caring. That's when things got really interesting, right? I would tell myself that. And don't worry about it, bro. It's going to be okay. You know, it's going to be okay.
I've got a really super person sitting with me, and I want it for those founders. I want it for those startups. What would be that small message to them to make sure that they did more than anything else?
I think founders need to recognize that their startup is not them, right? Often your identity becomes intertwined with your startup. I am insert. Your startup is a story that you're helping to share with the world. It is not your absolute identity. When you believe it is your identity, there will be many times you hate yourself a lot and few times that you love yourself, right? Because startups are hell 99.9% of the time with very few glimpses of happiness until the end. And I think that's just some real talk that folks need to hear.
You are outstanding. And I really do. I'm saying to myself now, I pray that I'm going to be working with you for the rest of my life.
Hey,
because
same. Maybe I should cancel. Well, no, I probably need to at least go back, and close up my dumpster back in the States.
You are a phenomenal character. You are a phenomenal human being. And I'm really honored to have you as a guest on our show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I was so happy to be here. Maybe this is why the Qatar was calling, right?
It's the start. I think you've got much more to do here. And I think the time is right. Okay, yeah. Because I've been involved with the startup ecosystem now for nearly 12 years. And I love everything about it. But I want people like you that really has had some big success stories. Because I'm promoting exactly what you're saying. Get your story right. Get your pitch right.
I was saying on my way up here when they told me a little bit about you, what you've done and what you're doing is perhaps the hardest thing you could choose to do. To build a community just takes a very special kind of soul. I can't do it. I only know a few people that can do it well. You have to be both headmaster, parent, brother, sister, accountant. And, you're generally herding a lot of very independent cats, fast cats.
Yeah.
I'm going to share in a couple of weeks 2-hour webinar where I'm going to share a lot of these secrets and sort of the magic and art of pitching and raising money and telling your story more importantly. So folks can reach out to me also directly on LinkedIn, on Twitter, or on Instagram, where you can see some of the crazy experiments and the dumpster stuff. So Twitter and Instagram, I'm Prof Dumpster, Prof Dumpster. And then I've got a website, jeffwilson.co as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much indeed. Yeah. Thanks for listening this week. I think there's no need for words from me to close this show. It was a fantastic time. Thank you so much for listening. Until next week. Thank you, Professor Dumpster, Jeff. It's been an honor.